What's up, guys? Welcome to our very first episode of Study Club. My name is Tony Benito, and we're talking about intraoral scanners today. And I know, it's not the most exciting topic, but how important is your intraoral scanner in your practice? And are you really using it to the fullest extent that it can be used for all the things? Because, of course, we want intraoral scanners to replace our impression material, right? That's first and foremost. And that's the reason why most of us purchase an intraoral scanner whenever it is that you adopted that technology. For me, that was back in 2010. The intraoral scanners that we had back then were really kind of difficult to use and really only meant for quadrant scanning. We weren't scanning full arches. We couldn't scan. We weren't even thinking about that back then. Right? Fast forward 15 years, now we've got phenomenal intraoral scanners at a really great price point. Some of you may have one scanner in your practice. Some of you may have 3 or 4 or even more in your practice. The reality is there's so much more that we can use them for other than just scanning our preps, okay? And so I think that's really going to be the focus of today's chit chat is how can we use our intraoral scanner and really get the most out of it in our practice? So let's get going. So yes, scanning and sending is for sure something that you're doing with your intraoral scanning, whether you're sending it to a laboratory or sending it to yourself, right, to do the lab work in-house. And I think more and more of us are doing that for a lot of different reasons. For me, I started doing my own lab work simply because I was never really sure what I was going to get back from the laboratory, right? The quality of it, how well it was going to be done, how timely I could get it. And then I always felt like I was paying all this money and really not getting my money's worth back from the labs. And there are some great labs out there, don't get me wrong, but still they have issues just like we have as far as hiring people, right? Maybe they have people that they relied on for doing lab work that for years and years did high quality lab work. They retire, they leave for whatever reason, and now they're having issues with consistency. It's something that I hear all the time when I talk to lab owners. So, there's a lot of power in doing your own lab work. And obviously at the Mod Institute, we are trying to, as hard as we can, to give you the tools for you to be able to do that, if that's something that you want to do. But if you're scanning and sending it to the lab, there are obviously some benefits and some things that make sense. Shorter lab turnaround times for sure. And at this point, maybe I'm just talking to those of you who maybe only have one intraoral scanner, or maybe, I don't know, whether there's anybody on Mod Pro who doesn't have an intraoral scanner. I would highly doubt it. But if you're out there, this is for you, okay? Why you should 100% have an intraoral scanner. Shorter lab turnaround times. And this comes down to a lot of things. First, we used to package all our labs materials up into a box. We had to get it to the post office or the UPS store. They had to ship it to wherever our lab was located. Most of us don't use labs that are located in the town that we live in. So this was a process, right? It took, a couple days at least for our impression just to get to the lab for them to be able to start working on it. So shorter shipping, no shipping issues, shorter turnaround times, 100% is a thing. You click that button, the lab has your digital data in a matter of seconds, and they can start working on it right away. The other thing is you can 100% save money on your lab costs because it costs money to ship anything through UPS or the Postal Service. So we don't have to pay for that anymore. You don't really need a printed model. In many cases, for a digital workflow, say a zirconia crown, there's no physical thing that gets created other than the actual crown, right? So there's not a lot of cost. It cuts the costs of how the labs can do business. And a lot of times, especially if you ask them, they'll pass that savings on to you because they're trying to get your business, right? Labs are competing with other labs for your cases, right? So they're going to make it make sense for you. And then last but not least, the accuracy of this, particularly for digital workflows. And what do I mean by a digital workflow? Let's go back to that zirconia crown, for instance. That whole process is done digitally. You send your intraoral scan, they utilize that to do a digital design, which creates an STL of your crown file. That STL gets moved over into the lab software, and then there is a milling process that creates that zirconia crown. Back in the day when we used to do PFM, for instance, right? You would take a physical impression, you'd send it to the lab, they had to pour a stone model of that physical impression up. They would do some fancy indexing it a lot of times to make and ditching the margins. There's a lot of manual labor involved in that. Then they would actually take wax and they would create your crown out of wax first. And then a lot of times that gets through this process of indexing and casting. You have to create the metal frame. I mean, there was so much labor involved in a porcelain fused to metal crown that labs just don't have to deal with anymore. So they love these digital workflows. It's so much simpler. I think the training, to be able to train a lab technician from not really knowing anything about dentistry to being able to create some really nice restorations, is much shorter nowadays. And the accuracy that we get out of this, because in every step of that process to create a PFM, there's inaccuracies that are being introduced, right? And just from going from having a physical impression to pouring up that model, there's a bunch of things that can happen that can introduce inaccuracies. Like, think about pouring up a model in dental school and how many bubbles you'd have in that thing, right? It's not the simplest thing to do. And so the digital workflow is much more accurate and much simpler for labs to undertake, and basically more predictable for them to be able to create something that's really nice from that digital workflow. So many reasons why intraoral scans are much preferred, especially nowadays, for these digital workflows to physical impression. So for maybe the one of you out there who doesn't have an intraoral scanner, this is something that you should absolutely know. And then the other part of it is how much you can learn about your own work right there on the spot. So you can take a scan of like a crown lay preparation like we're seeing here, and if you're under reduced, you get that feedback instantly. You can turn on a heat map on your scanner and it can show you the distance between your prep and the opposing tooth. So in this area, anywhere that I have blue is right at 1 millimeter, which will be fine if that's zirconia, but if it's anything else, it's not going to be fine. Like, I do a lot of Emacs. This would be an Emacs restoration. And so I need to refine my prep and rescan in order to make sure that I have proper material thickness, and the scanner shows me exactly where I need to make those adjustments to the prep, which is incredibly helpful. And I cannot tell you, particularly on second molars, how many times I've used this part of the technology to make sure that I have enough reduction. Because look, you can have the patient bite down, you can get your mirror and your light in there, but there's no chance you can see every aspect of that prep on a second molar, right, to be able to really tell if you have enough reduction. And there are tools that you can use. I get that. You can slide a ball burnisher. People do all sorts of things for this. This, to me, is the simplest and most predictable way to make sure that you have enough preparation. All right. And so let's talk about a case, all right? Because what I haven't talked about is how else you can use these intraoral scanners. Most of the intraoral scanning that is done in my practice is done in the hygiene room, and it's done on new patients. It's done on patients who are coming back for recall visits, who might be experiencing a problem, or if there's something that I want to talk to them about. Maybe we've been talking about their occlusion for years and years, and we want to see how much wear is actually happening, right, over the course of time. I can't necessarily appreciate that just from looking at a patient and keeping, right, what their teeth looked like 2 years ago in my brain and now trying to compare it to now. With an intraoral scanner, you can take a scan, right, in 2021 and a scan from 2025, and you can overlay those digital models, and the software will actually show you where the changes have occurred. So this is how we are, I don't want to say selling more dentistry. This is how we are educating our patients into doing the dentistry that we recommend more and more. And it's done in hygiene, and the scanning is done by my team. It's not being done by me. So this is a really important point. If you only have one intraoral scanner and it's tied up most of the day with scanning crown and bridge, it might be a good idea to get another scanner that lives in hygiene in order to do patient education and what we call health scans for our patients. Now, yes, it is going to require you to train your hygienist on how to use these intraoral scanners, 100%. It's not a big deal. And a lot of times with proper training, right, and enough time to do those scans, so maybe that you need to add 5 minutes to those hygiene appointments, or you need to, I don't know, trim something out, you can essentially be really successful with your hygiene team beginning these discussions, and then you as the dentist coming in and capping them off, right, with the pièce de résistance. Patient education is highly undervalued, I think, in our profession, and it goes not only into just talking about cavities and gum disease and all the things that we know about and have for years, but talking about occlusion and the position of the teeth and how crowding affects occlusion and all these things. You can train your team to begin those discussions, and then they can pass that torch to you when you walk in the room to kind of finish things off and recommend treatment. I think that's a really powerful way that that this can happen. And so let's look at this case real quick. This is a patient who came in and essentially, if you tuning in for the first time, our practice is a general dental practice, but we do have a lot of referrals that we get from other people. People know we do cosmetics really well. They send patients to the practice. And so we see patients a lot of times through what we call a cosmetic consult, which we don't charge for. The patient comes in, we take some photos, we sit down and talk to them about what they might need. And we don't give real specifics into that, but mostly it's just kind of general. What do I see? What might be a good way to fix this? And then we bring them back for a new patient visit on the back end to really work out the specifics of how that treatment's going to happen. And of course, to make sure that there's nothing else going on that we can't tell is happening in a real quick consultation type visit. So what I think of as the biggest benefits of an intraoral scanner have nothing to do with scanning your preps, okay? These new patient/consult appointments and educating these patients as to what is happening in their mouth visually. They can see a heat map of their occlusion, right? You can show them wear facets and things like that in their mouth without, a lot of times what do? We hand the patient a mirror, right? We shine a light in there, we ask them to open up, and we're pointing to things in their mouth. It's really hard to appreciate or to see things in that type of a scenario. So having a intraoral scan on the screen, having a photo on the screen is a really powerful way to educate your patients, right? This, for new patient visits, I have found builds trust. I am telling them something is going on in their mouth, all right? Not only am I telling them that, I am showing them that. I'm showing them what that issue and how that issue is manifested in their oral health over time, right? So whether that's wear, whether that's chipping, whatever it is that may be, I am showing them that in their mouth. I'm not just telling them they need this dentistry. I'm showing them why they need this dentistry. Trust is really big part of this. And the visual data helps with education. There's, patient walks in to my office, they've never met me. They don't know who I am. If I tell them they need a full arch of dentistry, what are they thinking? They're thinking, oh, this guy must have a boat. He must have a boat payment to make, or his kid's in college. He's got to pay to it, right? Whatever that may be, whatever we can imagine is going through the patient's mind. But with the visual data, it's, John Coyce does a really nice lecture on this where he talks about the data is the one giving the bad news to the patient. It's not the dentist. I'm just showing them the data, right? And it's the data that is giving them the bad news. I'm making treatment recommendations on how we can help move them in a better direction. Okay, so I love that for what an intraoral scanner can do from us. And then we can tie that data to existing pathologies. And that's really what I'm going to show you here with this patient is a patient walks in with a chipped tooth. Okay, why did that tooth chip? All right, we can show them that. And that's a really, really important thing. If you can show them on the intraoral scan where their teeth are positioned and why that tooth was stressed over time and eventually chipped or re-chipped after the dentist had already fixed it. And then last but not least, we can use these scans for any sort of planning workflow. So any new patient who gets an intraoral scan, if they decide 6 months later, right, that they want clear aligner therapy, we have those scans. If they chip a tooth 6 months later, we have those scans. If they break a tooth off at the gum line, guess what? We have those scans. We can make them a quick Maryland bridge and we can have something in their mouth almost immediately, right? So having this as a virtual patient essentially gives us the ability to help these patients if and when something happens down the road that requires treatment. All right, so let's look at this case, okay? And this patient came in and he said the words that we all want to hear. I need veneers. Not even I want veneers, but I need veneers. And most people would look at this and they would say, they would thank the Lord for sending this patient to them. But I looked at him and you know what I said? I said, I don't think you need veneers. All right, but let's talk about it. Why do you think you need veneers? And he said, well, I chipped a tooth. I'm like, well, all right, well, let's talk about that. Right? Why did you chip a tooth? And so once again, photos, intraoral scans, why did you chip that tooth? And this is one of the pictures that I took. I should say my team took. My team is the one who drives this process. Once again, they are highly trained individuals and they take these photos. They know if somebody has wear or is chipping their front teeth, this is a photo that needs to be in there. So we can show how a tight bite, how the relationship between the lower anteriors and the upper anteriors can cause stress and chipping and wear and things like that. So when we look at this, we can tell that those teeth are under some stress. Okay, you can see wear, you can see chipping. There are things that are going on here. How would veneers fix this? Right? I think a lot of dentists feel like, yes, this patient wants veneers, let's do veneers. How would veneers fix this occlusal issue? It will not. It will just give them more expensive things to chip and to break. All right? If teeth break, your veneers are not going to hold up any better. All right? I hate to tell you. You are sniffing glue if you think that veneers is going to fix this. If you totally disregard the occlusion, they will have issues at some point moving forward. Yeah, the teeth will look better. All right, and you will have been able to do a veneer case, but this isn't fixing the patient's problem. So when we look at this, right, the first thing that I recommend when we have a constricted occlusion like this is we need to put the teeth in the right place, right? So for me, this is a one-tooth problem. All right, if the only issue that the patient has is that chip on the tooth, I can do a composite, and I did one. Here it is, boom. Did a quick composite on that tooth, but I said, look, these teeth are not in the right position. We need to put these teeth in a better position using clear aligner therapy. That is step one. At that point, if you're not happy with your smile still, we can talk about veneers. And once again, this ended up being a veneer case, a 4-unit veneer case. But the first thing we did is we fixed the underlying problem, which was the occlusion. So I did this filling so he wouldn't have a chip in his tooth, all right? And he could walk around without issue, but then we launched into clear aligner therapy, and we needed to fix the relationship of those teeth. The other thing you can maybe appreciate is there's a little bit of an inclination of those incisors to the patient's right. Okay, so once again, what does this mean if we see that? Well, if we do no prep here, all right, it's going to be very hard to fix that inclination. All right, in order to fix an inclination, you need space in between the teeth so that the lab, whether you're doing the lab work or whether a lab is doing the lab work, they need space to be able to upright that midline. So if you have contact there, they're not going to be able to fix that appropriately. So one of the ways that we kind of killed two birds with one stone is in doing the clear aligner therapy, we were able to flare those maxillary incisors a little bit to not only create a much better occlusal relationship, but to also create some space at the midline. Okay, it's difficult with clear aligners to get everything just right without spending a lot of time. What I have found that a guy like this who comes into our practice, he doesn't want to spend a year in clear aligner therapy. He'll maybe do a few months, right? In this case, that's about what it took for us to get this occlusion fixed out, but he ain't doing a year. All right, so we got to keep our clear aligner process as simple as possible, knowing that we're going to come back and do veneers anyway. So we've created spaces in between the teeth, and we'll use the veneers to close those spaces. And once again, 4 teeth, okay, 4 teeth. So we're not doing a huge case. The teeth outside of those front 4 are in good shape, relatively speaking. 4 teeth to fix this smile. And then we can put those intraoral scans. The clear aligner therapy actually will, even before that's done, a lot of times you can download the STL file of the predicted final result of position of those teeth. You can put that into your design software, and you can start to play around with are these teeth in a good position to be able to execute this case? Or do I need to reposition things? Okay. And one of the nice things about having the ability to do design software like an exocad or like Itero has one for their intraoral scanner called Itero Design Suite. You have to have a Lumina or a 5D Plus, I think, in order. And we have something on Mod Pro, a complete course that I did on that design software. It's basically very similar to exocad, but it allows you to do this type of kind of a wax up. But you can either do this after the clear aligner therapy is done or utilizing the predictive positions of those teeth that the clear aligner company, we did Invisalign here, that the clear aligner company gives you, okay? To be able to tell and to show the patient even what this final result could look like. The other really nice thing about this is that when we look at like where the position of those teeth are, you can see we're correcting that midline discrepancy We're adding a little bit of length. We're making those small lateral incisors into adult-sized teeth now, which is one of the concerns and one of the main reasons, honestly, why we ended up doing veneers in the first place. He did not like his lateral incisors. Maybe do a little gum contouring here as well. And then we can also put that into a virtual articulator and get, it's not super accurate, but get an idea of how like the occlusion will work out. But anytime you add length to incisors, there's always going to be some ramifications occlusally, and it's nice to know kind of predictively what that'll do and how much length you can add in those cases. And then we can get a preview as well of how much preparation we're going to need based on minimal thicknesses of our veneer materials and the position of the teeth. So this is really nice. What you're looking at on the screen is essentially exocad telling us what the thickness of that mock-up is. Anywhere it's pink are areas that I'm going to need to do some reduction in order to get to those minimal thickness levels. And so this is a nice way to just talk to the patient about, hey, you know, we're not going to need a whole lot of preparation. For the most part, we're not going to have to touch your teeth too much. It's just these areas in the pink that we're going to have to remove a little bit of tooth structure. So that's kind of a cool patient education thing. It's also a nice, for me as the dentist, to know how much preparation I'm going to have and exactly where that preparation is going to need to be. So that's pretty cool as well. All right. So once again, intraoral scanners, so much more than just utilizing for scan and send. If you only have one, consider having maybe a couple more in your office. Train your hygienists on how to use them and how to start speaking to their patients about what they see. Reading that occlusal heat map, right? Any place they see those reds that indicate heavy occlusion, right? That's maybe the beginning of a good conversation that you can have with the patient. Regardless of whether it leads to treatment that day, it's patient education, and it will likely, if the patient has problems based on that, lead to some sort of treatment down the road. Now, what's your best way to learn a little bit more about intraoral scanning? Well, that's going to be Mod Pro. And in Mod Pro, we have coming soon the Assistant Corner. And the Assistant Corner is going to have essentially videos on how to train your team to utilize intraoral scanners. And it's going to be a little segment for each brand of scanner. So if you have an iTero, there's a section for that. If you have a 3Shape, a Medit, Prime Scan, there's a section for all of those where your assistants can sit down. Or if you have somebody who is new to your practice who's never used an intraoral scanner before, you can sit them down in front of those videos and they can learn the ins and outs of intraoral scanning. Well, guys, we hope you enjoyed this first ever Study Club episode on intraoral scanners. Next time, we're going to be talking about everybody's favorite topic, veneers. But for now, let's see what Wally and our special guests have to say on intraoral scanners. And remember, if you have any questions at any point, put them down in the chat and we'll be answering them in real time. Thanks. When you talk about your time at MUSC, if you happen to mention that, you probably should, that you were taught by Wally.
I was lucky enough to.
Feel free to tell a funny anecdote about how much of a pain in the ass he was. Yeah.
You got the easy Wally.
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
What's up, everyone? Today we are talking about a topic that, if we're honest, feels less like cutting edge dentistry and more like, why are we still having this discussion? It's 2026. We're talking about intraoral scanners. This is Wally, by the way, Wally's favorite topic.
20 years ago.
He's so mad that he has to talk about intraoral scanners because it's so basic. But the reality is, it is the gateway drug for digital dentistry. So if you're one of our Mod Pro members, chances are very good you have an intraoral scanner or 3 in your office. Yeah. But on the off chance that your practice doesn't have one yet, don't worry, you're not alone. Actually, you might be alone.
Almost.
Yeah, you might be alone. Yeah. And for those of you who are already using it to scan and send cases, or only using it to scan and send cases, we also need to talk to you because you're missing out on much of what our modern intraoral scanners can accomplish. Yeah. So grab a cocktail. Wally, what are you drinking? Coors Light?
Always.
How about you, Amanda?
A little IPA.
Yeah, grab a cocktail and join us on
Cheers, guys.
The very first Study Club episode. With me today, of course, is Mod founder and faculty member Wally Renee, and one of our local celebrities here in Charleston, Amanda Commissaro.
There we go.
Yeah.
Tough name.
Nice.
Let's start with you, Amanda. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I went to MUSC, where I had the privilege of learning from these two.
Awesome.
And then I
Yep.
did a residency at the Veterans Affairs Hospital in Birmingham, Alabama.
Awesome.
Came back to Charleston, worked for a large group practice for about 3 years, and now I have owned a practice in Mount Pleasant for, it'll be 5 years in July.
For those of you not in the Charleston area, Mount Pleasant is kind of the bougier
Yeah.
neighborhood.
Super nice.
A little bit. I don't live over there, though. I just work over there.
There you go. Perfect. So you are well versed in intraoral scanning. Obviously, having learned under us, we had I think a pretty robust digital dentistry curriculum at MUSC.
Yeah, I would say probably at the time, and Amanda, you could chime in, but we focused so heavily on scanning as kind of almost before you pick up a handpiece, you're scanning stuff. And not only just scanning, but we also focused on the whole workflow of design and milling and stuff like that, which was ahead of the time, considering this was like, quite a while ago. But I also think that if you look at, education in general, we were very lucky to have had the technology that we did in school to teach with. Some schools, universities don't have anything. We had so much cool tech.
Yeah, for
We
sure.
did. It was really nice, and it helped me know for after school to know what jobs to look for and then what I wanted.
So did the first office that you worked in, coming out of school, after your residency, did they have an intraoral scanner?
They did not, and I fought for one for 3 years, and I never got one.
And so you
Wow.
just left. You were like, forget this. This is not for me. if they
Kind
don't
of,
have this."
kind of, yeah.
Did you use it in your residency?
No,
See, this is
Didn't
the
have
problem.
one at the VA
This
either.
is the problem. Not in residency, not in some practices.
it
We
was
need-
like my dream when I was working. I was like, I can't wait till the day I can buy my own scanner.
For sure. And then you bought your own practice.
Yes.
Was there a scanner in that practice already?
There was a scanner
There was,
there.
okay.
But
so,
we got a second one about 2 weeks after I bought the
Nice.
practice.
Nice.
so I think that's a big thing that I know that I've learned in my time in practice is that one scanner generally isn't enough. So clearly, if you're only doing
It's true.
scanning your crown preps and sending them to the lab, obviously maybe one scanner will suffice, but there's so many other things that we can do with intraoral scanners that can benefit the practice. So I guess, Amanda, tell me a little bit about how you're using your multiple scanners in your practice.
Yeah, so I have a smaller office. We only have 4 operatories, and those 2 scanners are going all day. We scan every new patient, and then every existing patient gets scanned once a year. So at one recall, they get their bite wings. At the next recall, they get a scan.
Awesome.
And just for patient education purposes, you can tell them what you're seeing. You can show it to them. They love to touch and look at the screen. They think it's so cool.
Yeah.
And then also it's saved me so many times when someone calls and they say like, hey, Dr. K, I broke a tooth. And I'm like, great, I have a scan. I can get everything ready to go. You come in, we'll temporize you or do whatever. And it's no stress to me.
So scanner, 3D printer, yes. So what Amanda just said for me is groundbreaking, right? You have essentially a digital patient. And when one of your patients of records calls and they have an emergency, you have everything you need to put them back together, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah, it's come on in. It's not stressing about what I'm going to do. It's just get here and we'll figure it out.
And if you don't have a physical model, you're creating that physical model before maybe they even come into the office.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Now, Amanda, you're using Itero, right? And you have the Itero Design Suite, which is
Yes.
like ExoCAD Lite. And you took our week-long course on how to do same-day 3D printed restorations. And I've seen some stuff that you've been
Yep.
posting. You've been doing that, and you're designing on Itero Design Suite.
We go
or-
back and forth. We use ExoCAD and we use Design Suite.
Okay, because you have full-blown ExoCAD.
Yes.
You legend, yeah.
Yeah.
You would have that. But I've been seeing some of the cool stuff you're doing on Midas. You have a
Yes.
Midas as well.
I do.
So you basically have the full 360 workflow where you're able to scan, design, print, and deliver if you want in a single visit. But
Yes.
tell me some other ways that you're using your scanner besides just manufacturing restorations and diagnostics.
The main thing to me, I love using it for patient education. So it's so much different from me just saying, oh, you broke your tooth, will you need a crown, than to being able to show somebody, this is what your tooth looks like, you need a crown.
Yeah.
And case acceptance has gone like way up since we got the scanners.
Yeah.
And it actually takes things off my plate because my staff can do a lot of the scanning. So I don't have to physically be in the room while they're still doing something productive. And then we
Yeah.
also obviously use it for Invisalign
Sure.
and clear aligners, and
Yeah.
that workflow is so seamless using a scanner. Because at my first job, I didn't have a scanner, so I was trying to do clear aligners with PVS, which if anybody's done that, it's not fun.
Yikes.
Difficult.
Yeah, you're taking that impression, you're mailing it, and then 2 weeks later, you see a thing that says, "Oh, your impression wasn't good. We need you to do it again." Then you call the patient, like, "Mr. Smith, come back in," and then they have a goop again, and they're like, "This is not,
It's not fun.
fun."
Let's talk about that, because that's a really good point. So I will say that my first 5 years in dentistry and practice, I struggled a lot with just kind of some aspects of crown and bridge impression taking, and it's certainly like not really knowing how much reduction or if I had enough reduction for a certain crown prep. One of the things that I love the most about an intraoral scanner is you get immediate feedback, right? It pulls up that heat map of your occlusion. It can actually, you can calibrate your scanner to show you exactly where you might be under reduced, and you can go back in and refine that prep before you send that impression off to the lab, and that therefore you don't get those little nasty notes. And I know Wally gets these all the time from the lab. Well, he doesn't do it. Yeah, he doesn't send anything to the lab anymore.
I am my own lab for 20 years.
Mike sends you nasty notes about
Could be.
Yeah. But the reality is you don't have to deal with that anymore.
No.
So that's one of the things that when I first got into digital dentistry was maybe the biggest value add for me for this technology is not only it streamlines the workflow and everything, like we always say, but it also gives you that immediate feedback to make sure that the lab is going to be able to produce what you want them to produce without issue.
Yeah, that's what I say. I would have been better at dentistry quicker if I had a scanner to look at things, because there's nothing more humbling than seeing your prep blown up huge on a screen, or trying to find your own margins before you send something to a lab.
That's, to me, one of the biggest benefits is either marking your own margins or doing your own full, complete workflow all the way to manufacturing, because you learn and it's humbling. You get better every day when you're zoomed into your prep and you're marking your margin and you're looking for J-shaped margins, bevels, nicks, anything that doesn't look right, path of insertion, undercuts. If you think back to the way dentistry used to be taught, maybe in the 70s and 80s, where dentists would be more likely to pour up their own impression and trim their own die and look at their stuff, kind of fell out of favor in the 90s and the 2000s and stuff like that. But digital brings it back to where we're now self-critiquing and self-learning and adjusting constantly. I'm never happy with anything I ever do. I've never prepped a tooth, looked at it and been like, I nailed it. I always been like, really, man? Like, you go from a 0.8 millimeter shoulder down to nothing on the distal lingual line angle. And I'm like, really? 20 years of practicing, you think you've nailed that distal lingual line angle by now?
But you get that immediate feedback, and you know whether there's something that can be made on that prep, right? Like you can look at that prep in great detail and know, I can certainly make a prep off of this, or no, what I have just scanned is not usable. I need to go back and make those adjustments.
Yeah, but the thing that excites me the most about where scanning's going is with all the grammetry, where we have full arch implant cases where we have those unique shaped scan bodies that are more horizontal scan bodies shaped like diving boards or hexagons or flat scan bodies. And then in addition to that, some of the newer scanners with scanning removables like soft tissue tracking, the ability to scan a denture and copy it in like 3 seconds is insane.
And those workflows are built in the software.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's so cool. Or multiple bites. I always, for every new patient, I take a MIP bite and then an open bite, centric relation bite, in case I want to do a bite guard in the future. I already have them scanned at the vertical I want the guard to be at in like a repeatable centric position. I lock them in using the mod jig, which you could download, or a leaf gauge. But being able to just add multiple bites. I mean, think about how hard that was with physical mounting. You have to remount the case or cross mount the case at multiple verticals.
A lot of articulators.
Yeah, multiple articulators. And the whole secret of scanning to me is the ability to mesh things together. And I think a lot of dentists don't know this unless they've done their own exocad. Is you could take 2 scans as long as there's some common data. For example, if I take a scan of a denture and then I scan the tissue in the mouth, the softwares are able to automatically align those two separate and distinct things at the proper vertical, all through common data alignment. And that to me is the secret of digital dentistry. Faces, CBCT, intraoral scans, prosthetic scans, all synergistically combining to make the digital twin of the patient.
And if you're just getting in, like if you're a dental student who graduates this year, like you don't understand the pains that we went through. And not to sound like the old guy, but like, the first intraoral scan I took was 2010, right? For me, and I don't, you don't remember this case, but you were helping me with it. It was an onlay, and the intraoral scan, just the scan of a lower quadrant took me like 30 minutes.
Those were the days, man.
Like 30 minutes, and it was painful, but it's 15 years of growth and technology, and now we have multiple bites that we can do really simply, and all these workflows that it gets simplified for. So it's really the golden age of digital dentistry right now.
For sure. But what are you guys doing to get your margins crisp and clear on your scans? I mean, my technique is to pack a 00 cord, okay? And I make a custom compression cap using bite reg. So I'll prep the tooth. I'll go ahead and take bite reg and make a little Hershey kiss on the tooth.
I love that.
And I'll have them bite down on it. And that bite reg will squirt into kind of like the sulcus area of the prep. Then what I'll do is I'll pack a little 00 or trip 0, but usually 00. And then I will take expanding paste, whether it's Expasil or, everybody and their brother has an expanding paste these days. You can find them anywhere. I squirt a little bit around the prep, seat that bite reg back on the tooth, have them close back down and wait 3 to 5 minutes. All of the expansion from the paste, which has kaolin clay, diatomaceous earth, it has, aluminum chloride. This is going to expand down into the sulcus. It's like a custom compression cap, right?
Yeah.
It's going to expand down into the sulcus, pushing that 00 into like the nether regions of the sulcus, right? Because it pushes it down deeper. And then when you rinse and dry, it also desiccates the tooth. So it creates like a frosty white glow in the dark margin. And then when you scan it, like the cord keeps the crevicular fluid from seeping up over your margin and giving you that weird muddy water look on the color scan. But when you scan it, it is like, it's photorealistic. It's incredible. What do you guys do?
Not that fancy. I just use my 00 cord and a comper cap.
There you go.
But
Same idea.
yeah,
Same
I
thing.
mean, along with scanning with our better materials and things, we can keep margins hopefully more super gingival, so it's not as
Yes.
much of an issue when we can do that.
That's the way.
But when we're subgingival, 00 cord, usually wrap around the tooth twice, comper cap, dry, scan.
Nice.
I can't tell you how many times when we were at the university, students would come up to me and say, we couldn't scan this case because we were equigingival or slightly subgingival, and their attending told them that that wasn't a good digital case. And the reality is there's no such thing anymore.
no.
It's
No.
the same techniques, right, that we learned for physical impression taking that we just use for digital.
Yeah.
And it's every bit as good, and you can capture those margins. And yes, it is a little bit better with modern scanners, and the fact that they all, for the most part, scan in color and
Depth of field,
is
now 20 plus millimeters, whereas it used to be 15. And
Yeah.
so if you had that deep margin, it would struggle. But now, now there's no excuses.
And I think we all know the trick too, that you can turn your scanner from color to stone. So
Yes.
that way when you're looking at it, you can make sure you see the margin all the way and that everything's dry. And then
Yes.
how easy too that we can just, if there's an issue, erase a little spot and then just rescan. You don't have to go over the whole thing again.
That's especially helpful on full mouth cases where you got the whole arch prepped and you're going along and everything's looking good, and then one spot like you get a little heme
heme,
trickle,
yeah.
and you're like, with physical,
You gotta do
like
the whole
you
thing.
got to redo the whole thing. With digital, you just cut that tooth out or that area and just restitch it
Yeah.
in. I mean, look, we're preaching to the choir here. I know you guys are like, yeah, no duh, scanning's
We know.
awesome. But one thing I'm going to tell you is that the way that we're dealing with scanning here at Mod is just like Amanda said, it's patient education. Like, I don't think enough docs do this, where you bring up the scans on the screen. You don't need photography necessarily anymore of quadrants. You know, we used to have those like 2D cameras. I don't really use those anymore because the models have gotten to be so photorealistic that patients see in 3D, they understand how to look at their tooth, and I just think it's incredible.
And if you're having trouble with case acceptance for bigger cases, if you're trying to do more comprehensive dentistry, like I don't think that there's any replacement for showing patients their teeth.
No.
And an intraoral scan, especially when it's an occlusion related problem and it brings up that heat map, they can understand that. And I don't think we do a good enough job in dentistry, in patient education, and explaining that they have a problem and how they got to that issue. And I think for me, at least in my career, intraoral scanning has really helped me to dial in my patient education, and that has led to more case acceptance. Have you found that? I mean, you're doing Invisalign, so you're doing clear aligner therapy, and that heat map especially is brilliant that is used because it's really easy to show the patient that they have a little heavier contact, probably in the anterior, right?
Yeah.
And talk about what that means, why their anterior teeth are chipping, and how a little tooth movement might help them with that.
That a ton, and then a lot of people with deep bites, then you're talking to them about it, and then I'm like, oh, you look at this scan, like, where are your bottom teeth? Like, where are they? Because they want longer top teeth, or they want to fix their chipping, and then you can actually show them why I can't do that until we fix the foundation first.
Yeah. Now, some scanners have near-infrared transillumination. Some scanners have like plaque detection, where it will like fluoresce the plaque or highlight the plaque and generate surface area reports. To me, I have to be honest with you guys, that stuff doesn't excite me because I'm like, you could use like a 10-cent disclosing tablet and like show them where their plaque is anyway. But even that doesn't excite me. I feel like patient education around plaque and stuff like that doesn't need to be tech driven, but you guys might have a different opinion on that.
I tend to agree with you that. What do you think about overlaying scans from two different time points? Say you take a scan. I mean,
that's helpful.
Yeah.
I think that's very helpful.
100%.
Yeah.
Recession, where like to be able to really visualize, help the patient visualize that these are things that are changing. Because patients a lot of times, it's so subtle in their mouth when they're looking at it that they don't appreciate what's happening slowly over time. But to show them that visual, that's like data. That's what I mean about case acceptance. Patients, if we just say you need a crown or you're wearing your teeth, like they don't necessarily believe that. We show them the data, like the proof of that. That's pretty powerful.
The one thing I like is when we scan our new patients, we scan them before we do any cleaning.
Okay.
So if there's like a big old calculus bridge on the lingual of those lower anteriors,
Nice.
Yeah.
we show them. A lot of times they're like, oh, like gross. I'm like, yeah, but like we're gonna clean it off, and then you take another scan and show them, and it's like, oh my gosh, like that difference, and that adds so much value to what you do because they're seeing what you did.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's hard because they don't feel that. They don't really see that. Calculus bridges especially.
Wally, you seem like you've been having fun with this episode. Yeah, I don't think you were super excited about
I
it, but
mean, I'm still waiting for the heavy hit, like, you know, full mouth reconstruction talk or something. What's gonna come in here to excite me?
taking an intraoral scan, a bite at a fixed vertical dimension
It's
with
so
all the teeth prepped.
It's so easy because all you need is a few markers. Let me tell you about that because let's say you are going to prep the incomplete arch, especially on the mandibular where you don't have the palatal rugae or the palate to be a reference point to align two separate and distinct scans of say like a wax up pre-op to a prep scan. Maxillary is easy. You should always be scanning your palates, by the way, for that. But in the mandible, it's kind of difficult if you take a pre-op scan, you do a wax up, and then you prep every tooth in the arch, and then you expect the software or a lab technician to align those two together. Using just the soft tissue is difficult on a mandible, which is why you should always take an intermediary scan. And what an intermediary scan is kind of like a stitching scan where you prep almost every tooth in the arch, but leave three. Leave one anterior and one posterior on each side unprepped. Those are your reference teeth. And you don't need a pack cord or anything. Just do a quick scan of the whole entire arch. That is your alignment arch. And what that's going to be is aligned to the pre-op using those three teeth. Then prep those three remaining teeth, pack your cord, do your retraction paste, whatever you need to do to get good margins, scan. And that final scan is then stitched to the intermediary scan, which is already stitched to the preoperative scan. at the proper vertical. And so once you understand stitching, everything becomes possible.
Pretty powerful.
Yeah, anything is possible.
Well, I appreciate you coming, Amanda. I know that you worked all day today.
I did. Thank you for having me, though.
You've got a young girl at home that you're going,
I
so
do.
you're just working 24/7,
Yeah,
basically.
basically.
I like it, though. I enjoy what I do. It's exciting with all the new technology.
Love that. Any parting thoughts from you?
No, just exciting times and so much new cool stuff coming out. And thank you guys for constantly being on the edge of it and helping teach us all how to use it.
Love it. Wally, what do you got?
I just think, for me, the most exciting thing is not where we are now, but where we're going.
For sure.
And I've seen the future of scanning. I have a crystal ball into the future because companies reluctantly let me see what they have in the works because I have kind of a big mouth. But man, there's never been a more exciting time to be in dentistry. I mean, I feel like what's coming is just, you guys won't, with AI and scanning, where I won't name companies, but before you're even done with your scan, you already have an AI proposal of a crown or a tooth or a wax up or a smile.
It's coming.
Before your model renders. It is insane, guys. This is it. I mean, dentistry is leading all medical professions in technology utilization for real world applications. I mean, there's very few medical professions that could say that they're 3D printing human body parts and on a daily basis and delivering them for prosthetics.
Yeah.
I mean, it is so cool to be a dentist. I don't know. I mean, I just feel so lucky to be in this profession. That's all.
It's wild. For me, I think the take home is if you have one intraoral scanner, get another one, put it in hygiene, teach your hygienist to scan, do better patient education, right? Get more case acceptance. If you have one, maybe a second or third. The cost, it's not so bad anymore, right?
It's my favorite scanner is like 11 grand.
There you go.
Yep.
All right, y'all. Thanks for joining me. See you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.